Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ed Fulner, President of the Heritage Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Allison Auditorium today, where we have the great pleasure of welcoming a dear friend back to Heritage. We at the Heritage Foundation have known Paul Ryan since he was a very young staffer working for Heritage's distinguished fellow, Jack Kemp. Jack Kemp as in Tax Cut Kemp. We had the opportunity to work with Paul when he was at Empower America, when he was a backbench Republican member, when he was chairman of the House Budget Committee, and then chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And now we're honored to continue working closely with him as he serves as Speaker of the House of Representatives. We value his commitment to the principles that hold the conservative movement together. And we look forward to continuing our close engagement with him, particularly as we work to transform America's tax system in a true Kempian manner. It's my great honor and privilege to welcome back to the Heritage Foundation our good friend, Speaker Paul Ryan.
Look, first of all, to Dr. Fulner and all the people here at Heritage, thanks for having me. But the very first thing I want to say is I want to say how much we, each of us, myself included, owe to this man, Ed Fulner. The conservative movement has never had a happier warrior or a more influential one. Look, I get a kick out of this story that, like I said, I've known Ed since I was in my early 20s. He tells this story from 1971 about a meeting that he had on Capitol Hill. I'm sure you probably know where I'm going with this. He heard some things about a freshman congressman who had some big ideas about economics. And that, of course, shocked him. That's how he came to know Jack Kemp. It was the very first of many meetings and many exchanges between the two of these two great icons of the conservative movement, these great friends. You know, back then, that's basically what you had to do. You had to go door to door to find like-minded conservatives. Well, Ed Fulner, he changed all of that, and he gave us all of this. He helped give us a conservative movement that moves. He inspired a generation to take on public service as a vocation, to reclaim our founding principles and apply them to the problems of the day. And the one thing that we know is that ideas alone, they're not enough. That doesn't quite just cut it. If they were, we would have already fixed our broken tax code by now. I wouldn't be here taking up your morning. Bold reform means taking on not just the status quo itself, but the people who defend it, who stop at nothing to keep the system rigged. In that spirit, I'm here to talk about a big choice that we have to make, a choice that is just so central to the future of our country. As you know, under President Trump's leadership, we have released a framework for overhauling our tax code. The tax writers on the Ways and Means and the Senate Finance Committees are currently filling in all of the details. But the central tenets of our plan are very clear. Our plan will lower tax rates at every income level for families. It will deliver the lowest tax rates in modern history for job creators of all sizes. We will end the death tax, repeal the alternative minimum tax, and eliminate the marriage penalty. And we will dramatically simplify the tax code altogether, clearing out the special interest carve-outs and loopholes. We will go from having the worst tax code among the industrialized nations to one of the most competitive. And for families, all of this will mean more jobs, fairer taxes, and bigger paychecks. For our economy, it will mean the real growth that has eluded us for too long will restore. So tax reform is clearly in our economic interests. It's also in our greater national interests. And the reason is this. Embedded in our DNA is this beautiful notion. The condition of your birth does not determine the outcome of your life. And what affects it, what drives it, it's your own striving, it's your own sense of purpose. If you work hard, you play by the rules, you can rise. If you fall short, you can bounce back. You can make something of yourself and of your dreams. It is this idea that has helped make America so exceptional and Americans so resilient. I got to say, though, in our time, this promise has dimmed. And for many people, we've barely moved the needle. So look at our tax system today, and you will see a picture of why so many hardworking people feel that they're being left out. As our tax code has grown, so too has its bias against the middle class and the people who are striving to get there. You know, the way things work today, the wealthy and the well-connected, they got their prime choice of carve-outs. They pay accountants good money to use all of those loopholes. Who can blame them? If Washington's going to be in the business of picking winners and losers, of course people are going to line up to game the system. And over the years, both parties, and I mean this, both parties have enabled this, tucking in this or that pet provision with their own narrow set of beneficiaries. So the working mom out there right now with some great idea for a business but no connections, or the family living paycheck to paycheck, you know, trying to pay for college, trying to patch up the roof on the house, or just build up a rainy day fund for the unexpected. The tax code offers you no meaningful relief. It makes you shoulder more and more of the burden. It hurts your ability to save and invest. It drowns you in a tax code so hopelessly complex that you got to pay somebody to navigate it for you. You never really know how much you're going to pay, and that's kind of the point. Or you just may not be able to afford that. So you're just going to try and figure it out on your own. Maybe you overpay, or maybe you make an honest mistake, and then you end up getting a call from the IRS. Meanwhile, the well-connected, they've got the resources and the wherewithal to find just the right loophole or benefit. And as we stay locked in this cycle, other countries just keep passing us by. We are losing jobs to countries like China who are taxing their businesses at much lower tax rates. Our foreign competitors are more than happy to take the growth in their businesses. This tax code is sapping our aspirational spirit, and it enables our decline. It's just that simple. So this is no time to shy away from taking on the defenders of the status quo. You know, the special interests who prop up this tax code, they seek to extract the most value for themselves, even if it means keeping the country on the path to decline. While the last year brought us a lot of new hope, if we choose to do nothing, we allow people struggling to get by to become the permanent normal. We allow stagnation to become our way of life. And you know as well as I do that if we fail to restore real growth and opportunity, that plays directly into the hands of the left. Stagnation is the breeding ground for a class-based society where elites in Washington seek to micromanage and predetermine the path of our lives. They would rather equalize the outcomes and lull us into lives of dependency. We know how this movie ends. We've seen it many times before, and we cannot let this happen, not here in this country. So right now, we've got a chance to get off this downward path, to remove these barriers of upward mobility, to restore the value of work and ingenuity. So the choice is clear, and it is this. Are we going to be a country that renews its promise? Or are we going to accept this kind of decline? Are we going to leave things better off? Or are we just going to leave? You see, this is not merely about what kind of tax code we're going to have, what our rates are. It's about something much more profound. This is about what kind of livelihood people can expect in this country. It's about whether moms or dads can afford to send their kids to college or save for retirement. It's about the dignity that comes with being able to take care of your own. All of us have talked about tax reform for years, for decades, in Ed's case. The moment's here, and the moment's now. And like any opportunity of a lifetime, it has to be seized. We have to choose to turn this page. We have to choose to do this. You all know this. An army of lobbyists will come to protect the special interest provisions and to derail tax reform. And when that army comes, we must be able to count on the foot soldiers of the conservative movement to see this thing through. Hardworking families gain nothing if we slip into complacency. They gain nothing if we allow ourselves to be distracted. Our workers do not see their paychecks rise one penny if we shrink from this moment. We know what we are for, and we know what needs to be done. And now we have to have the resolve to achieve what we have fought for so long. Now, rest assured, you are going to hear, and we are already hearing, the same recycled, stale criticisms from the naysayers and the defenders of the status quo. These are the folks who believe that we can just tax and spend our way to prosperity. These are the folks who helped rig our tax system to benefit entrenched interest in the first place and are intent on keeping it that way. You know what I say? I say, let's have this debate. Let's tackle these baseless arguments head on. Bring it on. Where better to start than the same tired old line of attack that this tax cut is a tax cut for the rich at the expense of the middle class? How original. They've been saying this stuff for years, for as long as I can remember. You know what the irony is of all this? A tax system that disproportionately benefits the wealthy instead of the middle class, that's the one we've got right now. It works best for those who know how to take advantage of all the breaks and deductions. Under our plan, people in the middle get real relief. We are lowering rates so that we can keep more of what we earn. Instead of 7 brackets spread out across the code, there will just be 3. You know what, on top of that, we're going to nearly double the standard deduction so more people will pay no taxes on more of their income, so more families will get a break. So in reality, this plan is really the single most important thing we can do to help the middle class. Lower tax rates, a larger standard deduction, a bigger child tax credit, and a code that is simpler and fairer for everyone. They will tell you that eliminating carve-outs will actually hurt middle-class families rather than the special interests. This one takes the cake. Give me a break. Most hardworking Americans never see a dime from these loopholes. Instead, these pet provisions just reward the few and keep rates artificially high for everybody else. They only make it more difficult to get tax relief to those who actually need it the most. So yes, we're going to throw out the special interest loopholes that riddle our tax code. While doing that, we're going to preserve the incentives that people rely on for home ownership and charitable giving. We're going to simplify benefits for work, retirement, and higher education. You know, this is so important because our tax code does not only complicate your life every spring, it complicates the most important decisions families actually make. It just adds to the stress. Here's an example. Families trying to send their kids to college had to sift through about a dozen different tax breaks and about 100 pages of IRS instructions just to figure out if there are benefits that could help them. We're going to simplify all of this to the point that most Americans will be able to file their taxes on the form the size of a postcard, one just like this. And you know what? For defenders of the current system, this right here, this is their worst nightmare. Because this empowers people to see how much they are paying and why. This increases transparency. And we know how terrifying a proposition that is for the IRS and the defenders of the status quo. Finally, and this may be one of the most off-base charges you're going to hear. They will tell you that cutting the corporate rate only helps the fat cats. Here is what a candidate for president in 2012 said, quote, "Our current corporate tax system is outdated, unfair, and inefficient. It provides tax breaks for moving jobs and profits overseas, and it hits companies that choose to stay in America with one of the highest tax rates in the world," end quote. You want to guess which candidate that was in 2012? It wasn't Mitt Romney. That was Barack Obama. Now, it is true that because of all these loopholes and deductions, many corporations don't actually pay the 35% statutory rate. That actually proves my point. If we get rid of these special interest carve-outs and cut the statutory rate, corporations will pay what they're supposed to pay. That is what we mean when we say the system will be fairer for everyone. But beyond that, fixing the business side of our tax code, it's really about helping families. It's really about helping workers. Cutting the corporate tax rate means more jobs right here in the United States. It will foster increased competition, which will directly drive up wages for our workers. You know what higher wages means? Higher wages means bigger paychecks. Bigger paychecks and lower tax rates means more money in your pocket. And more money in your pocket means a better, higher standard of living. You know, over the past several months, I've been traveling the country, visiting with companies both large and small. I've toured factory floors. I've talked with incredible people making things right here in the United States. the people who are developing cutting-edge technology and who are reviving American manufacturing. It's really impressive to see. And it's in spite of ferocious international competition. And wherever I've gone, I hear the same exact thing. Our tax code is crushing growth. We have less to invest in equipment and research and development. We have less to invest in jobs, and we have less to invest in wages. While the defenders of the status quo are content with having a tax system that drives good-paying jobs overseas and traps trillions of dollars in profits abroad, we are not content with that. We don't want to just level the playing field for our businesses and our workers. We want to give them a clear advantage over foreign competition. And a territorial system like the one that we will propose, that will allow us to bring profits back home so that they can be reinvested into our economy and into our workforce. In fact, the National Association of Manufacturers, they just did a survey last week, and they found that if enacted, according to their survey and their members, a majority of manufacturers in America will raise their wages and hire more workers. That's what you get when you get tax reform. Higher wages, more jobs, higher standard of living. And if we are really, truly serious about creating more jobs, we need to help out our small businesses in a big way. That's where most of the jobs come from. And that is why we are proposing a new lower tax rate structure for all small businesses. This is the kind of bold reform that will revive main streets across the country, something that we so desperately need. Look, working together, House, Senate, the President Trump, we will see this thing through. Because this is a choice at hand. More decline and stagnation, or the renewal of the American idea. Protect powerful interests or empower the people who work hard and play by the rules. In the end, it will not be me who decides what we do. By now, I think you get the sense of what I believe, where I stand on tax reform. No. It will be this movement which decides which direction we take. It will be all of us in the conservative movement which decides which direction we go. And if we pull together, if we reject the usual tired cynicism, we will get this done. We will do something so historic that it really materially improves people's lives and puts this country on the right track. And if we do not, if we let up and if we lose our nerve, if we squander this opportunity, it's not going to come back. I am under no illusions about how difficult this is going to be. It hasn't been done since 1986. But we cannot rest. I will not rest until this work is done. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
That was terrific. Hey, all right.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Oh, boy, that was terrific,
Good to
Paul.
see you.
I was on Stuart Varney the other day. I guess I committed a big blooper because I said tax cuts, 7 to 3, increase the exemption, repatriation, and cut the business rate down to 20. But you talk about reform.
It's both. I talk about you have to reform the code itself so that the game is not rigged, so that people get to keep more of their own what they earn, and that also is a tax cut. So it's really two things. It's cutting taxes, cutting tax rates, letting families keep more of what they earn, but reforming the system so that the system is pro-growth and less cronyism, more opportunity.
Yeah. As you travel around and meet with small businesses, et cetera, does the mom and pop bakery in Janesville understand the importance of like repatriation,
Yeah,
of
they do,
expensing instead of deducting?
Oh, for sure. Small businesses completely understand expensing quite a bit. If they can expense a truck or a piece of equipment, if it's a small manufacturer, with 25 employees, which is really common where I come from, they've got CNC machines, which are really costly. They know what expensing means because they'll tell you exactly what piece of equipment, how long it takes them to write it off. You walk through a factory in Wisconsin, with 10,000 square feet, they'll say that takes 7 years to write off, that takes 15 years to write off. My tax rate's 40%, my tax rate's 38%. They know their tax rates. And overseas, which where I come from means Lake Superior, we compete directly with Canadians. I'm just, in Wisconsin. And that's just the way the world goes. They tax all their businesses at 15%. 80% of our businesses in America are not corporations. They're what we call pass-throughs, sub-S's, LLCs. It's really where all the jobs come from for the most part. Their tax rate is north of 40% in many cases. And the average tax rate on businesses in the industrialized world, our major competitors, is 22.5%. So businesses know this. Businesses know that in tough competition where our economy's been pretty flat and stale, 1 to 2% growth, it's really hard. They can't give raises, they can't hire. But more importantly, they're getting crushed in international competition if they're in any kind of internationally competitive industry, which is almost most industries these days. So businesses, big and small, know this very, very much. I hear two things. The regulatory state's been killing me, and taxes are just putting me out of business. And we know, and they all run their numbers. We know we get this tax system fixed, we get these tax rates down, we're going to be in really, really good shape.
As I look around at the conservative movement and the leaders of the conservative movement, I can't think of anybody around who isn't enthusiastic about what you're talking about. But then I look at some of your own colleagues in the House. For example, what are you going to do about deductibility of state and local?
Yeah. This is why this hasn't been done since 1986. I think, as a product of having been a heritage, person and having been an Empower America, as being a conservative movement think tanker myself when I was in my 20s, I really do see that the conservatism and the conservative movement is as unified about this as it has about anything else I've ever seen. So I feel very, very good where we are with respect to everybody rowing in the same boat in the same direction. And that's not always the case.
For sure.
But that's the thing we have to get over. And it's really the general interest is going to have to trump over the special interest. So things like state and local deduction, which I would argue we're propping up profligate big government states, and we're having states that actually got their act together pay for states that didn't. I think Wisconsin versus Illinois, that's what rushes to my mind.
There it is. Yeah. As an Illinoisan,
I know. That's why
that.
So these are the issues that we have to help members see the big picture. And by the way, people, by doubling the standard deduction, lowering people's tax rates and increasing the child tax credit and getting rid of the marriage penalty, people are going to be better off no matter what state you come from. So, that's the point we have to make, and we have to appeal to the general interest, which is you want to grow jobs, you want American businesses to stop leaving this country. Where I come from, the biggest company we used to have, headquartered in Wisconsin, was Johnson Controls. I bet you the thermostat on the wall is probably a Johnson Control thermostat. They are an Irish company now. And their worldwide tax rate is 12.5%, it's not 35%. That's happening all around the country, where businesses are up and moving because of tax policy. And they're being bought by foreign companies, and the headquarters are leaving, and we're losing our seed capital. So I think for lots of reasons, members are beginning to appreciate there may be some narrow thing that they don't particularly like in this, but the broader picture so clearly prevails over the narrow view, and that this is good for their constituents, good for the country. And that's why I feel very good about where we are in the House.
Fantastic.
And the Senate.
Yeah, well, a little more challenging maybe, right, Dave? Where we are right now, middle of October, you've got, I don't know how many legislative days, not enough, and you're not always in when the Senate's in.
Yeah,
and
that's this week's case.
And how many times do you pass something and it just goes over and it sits on the Senate calendar? You've got what? More than 100 items sitting over there waiting for the Senate.
It's 273, but who's counting? Maybe 274. Yeah. We're going to keep people here till Christmas if we have to. I mean, I don't care. We got to get this done. I mean, it's just that important. And so we are actually on track timeline-wise. The House passed its budget resolution. The Senate got it out of their committee. Next week, they'll move their budget resolution. Then we'll go to a conference committee, get that done, pass that conference report, and then the Ways and Means Committee will put their bill out because they have to get a revenue line from the budget conference report. Yeah. Then they'll put their bill out, and then we'll go to markup, and we'll go to the floor. We'll get it over to the Senate in November, and then the Senate will process it. And that gives us time to get this thing done in law. So our point is get it done this year. We want to wake up on New Year's Day with a new tax system. Because we get a new tax system in the beginning of 2018, that means all of 2018 is a good year where we can get north of 3% growth. I fundamentally really believe we can hit at least a 3% economy in 2018. The difference between a 2% economy and a 3% economy is trillions. Yeah. It's higher wages, bigger paychecks, more take-home pay, and growth and opportunity abound. It really is that big of a difference. And that's why we have to get it done now so that we can have a very good 2018.
Yeah, you go back to the Reagan years and you look, it wasn't just 3 either. When you
No.
get 3, it's easier to get to 4.
That's exactly right.
And
That's exactly right.
it's so much better for everybody as you look ahead and move ahead. As you know, I had the opportunity to talk with the president not long ago, and I urged him to get his cabinet out there talking about the same thing. Are you doing this with all your members?
Oh, yeah.
Are they out?
Absolutely.
They're all on the same message?
Absolutely. Right, Dave? Yeah. No, they really are. We're crisscrossing the country. We're doing events. I mean, I do quite a few events all around the country constantly. I was just up in Aston, Pennsylvania with Pat Meehan at a forging business. I was just over with Andy Harris, on the other side
sure.
of the
Yeah,
Eastern
Eastern
Shore.
Shore, yeah.
Yeah, at a manufacturing firm. So we're doing events all over the country.
Great. And you talked about the other body. Obviously, you've got great members like your own Ron Johnson.
Yep.
Are we making inroads with Dems, or are we keeping our guys and gals in line?
I think the answer is yes to both of those. The reason we wanted to do it this way, meaning release a framework, is a lesson we learned from healthcare. The House passed its Obamacare repeal and replace bill back in May. And then the goal then was, we'll get this done in May, and you guys in the Senate get yours done in June, and we'll wrap this up by the 4th of July. That was the plan. The Senate took months, tried to get this thing called the skinny budget. That didn't work. Then they tried to get Graham Cassidy. That didn't work. And so what we decided to do was, let's put more time and energy at the front end of the process to get everybody on the same page to agree on this framework, this framework was written by the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee with the Trump White House, with Treasury and NEC is Gary Cohn's shop. Yeah. So that we have a framework that we agreed to ahead of time, put that out, and now those tax writers are filling the details inside this framework. So by doing 4 months of spade work ahead of time, by getting us on the same page, that makes the actual process of staying together and hitting our timelines that much easier. That's point one. Point two, I think as Republicans, we're wired much more similarly. Our DNA is on tax reform, especially this kind of tax reform, broad and based, lower rates. We don't have border adjustment, which became a controversial thing, so we just wanted to get to consensus, and that's what this reflects. With respect to Democrats, I can't imagine a Democrat from a state like mine, a manufacturing agriculture state like, say, Indiana or North Dakota or Missouri, would just decide to vote with the ideological left against their own constituents, against their constituents who are farmers and ranchers and small business people who are struggling just as much as Virginians and Wisconsinites under an oppressive tax system. I can't imagine a Democrat will I understand they're going to vote ideology in the party line on judges and things like this, but on something so rudimentary, so clearly in the interest of their constituents and the economy of the people that they serve, I can't imagine we're not going to get some votes from some of these Democrats. I really believe. Because if you listen to what they say, they're saying the same thing we're saying. I just quoted Barack Obama on the need to lower corporate tax rates. So I really do believe at the end of the day that there's going to be a bipartisan support for this. And given that we're wired the same way on tax reform, I feel like we're on the same page. And the last point I'll say is, unlike healthcare, where we could only put about half of what we wanted to in a reconciliation bill on healthcare, a lot of that's regulatory stuff that you can't put in reconciliation, the whole bill goes into this. This is a one-and-done effort, meaning the entire tax reform package, the entire tax cut bill is in one bill that is through reconciliation, which cannot be filibustered, and that complete product makes it easier to pass.
And that's what the president signs, and that's it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. This might be a little off point, but I don't know if you've traveled much overseas. I have, and a couple of times in Europe within the last couple months, I'm always asked, are you guys really serious about tax reform? And they say it almost a little bit concerned because, boy, if the United States really coming back worldwide, they're worried. They're worried for their own businesses.
I just mentioned Johnson Controls. Their headquarters is Cork, Ireland. You go to these other tax jurisdictions, they've been pulling our companies left and right. Netherlands, Germany, Ireland, England, Switzerland. A ton of companies going to Switzerland. And I mean, we're Miller people where I come from, but Budweiser's a pretty popular brand. Yeah, their headquarters aren't in St. Louis anymore. It's in Belgium.
Belgium.
So that's happening all across the world. where foreign companies are buying U.S. companies because of tax reasons, or U.S. companies are just inverting. And so, yeah, I think a lot of foreign businesses, countries, they see a huge advantage over us because we're doing it to ourselves. When we lower our tax rates below the international average, we are going to lead again. We basically have the worst code in the industrialized world, the worst code. And we're going to be in the front of the pack. And that will be that's what we did in '86, and look what happened as a result. It was a phenomenal growth in jobs and investment and opportunity. And just the anxiety we have in America today, there's a lot of reasons for it, but I would argue economic stagnation is one of the greatest reasons for it. Income levels, wage stagnations, flat living standards, that is the stuff of anxiety. That is the stuff of the polarization we see in America. We get growth and opportunity restored and confidence restored in this country, which is what tax reform gets you. It's going to help a lot of our problems. It's not going to solve every problem in America, but it's going to make a whole bunch of them a lot better.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Paul, I just want to say as we wrap this up that our joint mentor, Jack Kemp, would be very, very proud of you. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Appreciate it. Thank
great.
you. Thanks for coming
Thanks
back,
for coming
too.
over.
Appreciate it. Nice. Really, don't.
Yep.
Yeah.